I am Elena Rodriguez, 31 years old, and until last month, my sister Isabella believed I was just another struggling teacher planning a pathetic bargain wedding. She laughed at my $500 budget, called it embarrassing to our family name, and organized an intervention to stop what she termed my financial humiliation. Then came the moment when the venue owner at Grandview Estate walked into our family meeting, looked directly at me, and said, "Mrs. Chairman, your usual table is ready for the board meeting." The silence that followed changed everything my family thought they knew about my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning that would ultimately transform my relationship with my family began with what appeared to be a routine phone call from my sister Isabella. I was sitting in my modest studio apartment in downtown Portland, grading student essays while sipping coffee from a chipped mug that had accompanied me through 7 years of teaching at Roosevelt Elementary School. The autumn rain painted gentle patterns against my single window, and classical music played softly from my laptop speakers, creating the peaceful environment I had carefully cultivated for my weekend grading session. When Isabella's name appeared on my phone screen, I felt the familiar mixture of affection and apprehension that characterized most of our interaction. At 28, Isabella had built what appeared to be an enviable life as a marketing executive at a prestigious advertising firm, complete with a downtown penthouse, designer wardrobe, and social media presence that showcased luxury experiences across the Pacific Northwest and beyond. Her success was frequently highlighted during family gatherings, where our parents would discuss her promotions, salary increases, and professional achievements with obvious pride and satisfaction. "Elena, we need to talk about this wedding situation," Isabella announced without preamble, her voice carrying the authoritative tone she had perfected in corporate boardrooms. "I have been thinking about your announcement last week, and frankly, I am concerned about the impression this will make on our family." The wedding announcement she referenced had been delivered during our monthly family dinner at our parents' house in suburban Beaverton. I had shared the news that my longtime boyfriend Marcus and I had decided to marry in a simple ceremony that would reflect our values and financial circumstance. When pressed for details about our planning progress, I had mentioned our budget of $500, which would cover basic ceremony fees, simple refreshments, and minimal decorations for a small gathering in a local park pavilion. The reaction to this budget revelation had been immediate and uncomfortable. Isabella had exchanged meaningful glances with our parents, Miguel and Carmen Rodriguez, while our younger brother Diego had attempted to lighten the mood with jokes about budget weddings and clearance romance. The evening had concluded with strained conversations about financial responsibility and family expectations that left me feeling defensive about choices I had previously considered thoughtful and practical. "Isabella, Marcus and I have discussed our priorities extensively," I replied, setting down my red pen and preparing for what I suspected would be a challenging conversation. "We prefer to begin our marriage without debt, and we believe that the ceremony itself is less important than the commitment we are making to each other." Isabella's response revealed the depth of her concern about my wedding plans and their potential impact on our family's social standing. "Elena, I understand that teachers do not earn substantial salaries, and I respect your commitment to education and service. However, this $500 wedding will reflect poorly on our entire family. People will assume that we cannot afford to support your celebration properly, or worse, that we do not value your happiness enough to contribute meaningfully." Her words stung because they touched on insecurities I had been managing throughout my adult life. As the eldest of 3 children, I had chosen a career path that provided personal fulfillment and social contribution rather than financial advancement. Teaching elementary school students brought me daily satisfaction and a sense of purpose that transcended monetary compensation, but it also meant living modestly while my siblings pursued more lucrative professional trajectories. Isabella had graduated from Portland State University with a business degree and immediately secured a position at Henderson Creative, one of the city's most prestigious advertising agencies. Her starting salary had exceeded my current income as a 7-year teaching veteran, and her rapid advancement through account management roles had established her as the family's undisputed financial success story. Diego, now 25, worked as a software developer at a growing technology startup, earning compensation that allowed him to afford a lifestyle that included frequent travel, expensive hobbies, and luxury purchases that he shared enthusiastically on social media platforms. "I appreciate your concern about family perception," I told Isabella, "but Marcus and I have created a budget that reflects our actual financial circumstances and personal values. We are not asking for family contributions, and we believe our guests will understand and support our choice." Isabella's sigh conveyed frustration with what she clearly perceived as my inability to understand the broader implications of my wedding decisions. "Elena, this is not about understanding or supporting your choice. This is about preventing embarrassment and ensuring that your wedding reflects the dignity and respect you deserve as our sister and daughter." She proceeded to outline an alternative vision for my wedding that revealed both her generous intentions and her fundamental misunderstanding of my situation and preference. Isabella proposed organizing a proper celebration that would include a reputable venue, professional catering, floral arrangements, photography services, and entertainment appropriate for what she termed a wedding worthy of our family standard. "I have already researched several venues that could accommodate 50 to 75 guests," Isabella continued, her enthusiasm building as she described her vision. "The Riverside Lodge has availability in 3 months, and their wedding package includes ceremony space, reception dinner, basic decorations, and coordination services for approximately $8,000. I would be happy to contribute half of that amount as your maid of honor, and I am confident that our parents and Diego would want to participate in funding a celebration that properly honors this important milestone." Isabella's proposal was delivered with such confidence and goodwill that I found myself momentarily speechless. Her willingness to contribute significant personal funds demonstrated genuine care for my happiness and concern about my wedding experience. However, her assumptions about my needs, preferences, and circumstances revealed a fundamental disconnect between her perception of my life and my actual reality. "Isabella, I am grateful for your generosity and your desire to ensure that my wedding is memorable and meaningful," I responded carefully. "However, Marcus and I have already committed to our current plan, and we are comfortable with our budget and arrangement." The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Isabella's conviction that my wedding plans were inadequate and potentially damaging to our family's reputation. She presented arguments about social expectations, family traditions, and the importance of celebrating major life events with appropriate recognition and investment. "Elena, you are not considering the broader implications of this decision," Isabella insisted. "Your wedding will be discussed and remembered by our extended family, our parents' friends, and your professional colleagues. A $500 celebration will be seen as either evidence of financial struggle or lack of family support, neither of which accurately represents our circumstances or our feelings about your marriage." Isabella's persistence stemmed from genuine concern, but it also reflected assumptions about my financial situation that were both inaccurate and presumptuous. She believed that my modest lifestyle and conservative spending reflected limited resources rather than deliberate choices, and she assumed that I would welcome financial assistance that would enable a more elaborate celebration. The truth was significantly more complex than Isabella understood, and my reasons for maintaining budget constraints extended far beyond simple financial limitations. However, explaining these reasons would require revealing information about my circumstances that I had deliberately kept private from my family for reasons that related to both personal preference and professional consideration. Marcus entered my apartment during this conversation, carrying groceries for our planned Sunday dinner and wearing the casual weekend attire that reflected his work as a freelance graphic designer. At 33, Marcus had built a successful design practice that served clients ranging from local small businesses to regional nonprofits, earning income that fluctuated seasonally but provided adequate financial security for our modest lifestyle. Isabella wants to contribute $4,000 toward an $8,000 wedding at the Riverside Lodge, I explained to Marcus, covering the phone briefly to summarize the conversation. Marcus raised his eyebrows with an expression that conveyed both surprise and mild amusement. He was aware of my family's tendency to assume that my teaching salary represented my complete financial picture, and he understood my reasons for maintaining privacy about additional income sources and investments that I had developed over several years. "That is a generous offer," Marcus replied diplomatically, but I thought we had decided that our current plan aligns better with our values and long-term goals. I returned to the phone conversation with Isabella, who had been discussing additional details about venue options and vendor recommendations while I spoke with Mark. Her enthusiasm for wedding planning had escalated during the brief interruption, and she was now describing coordinated color schemes and menu selections that reflected her expertise in event coordination and her desire to create a memorable celebration. Isabella, I need to decline your generous offer, I said firmly but kindly. Marcus and I are committed to our current plan, and we believe it will create exactly the kind of wedding experience we want to share with our family and friends. The silence that followed my definitive response lasted several seconds, and was filled with the weight of Isabella's disappointment and confusion. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a mixture of frustration and hurt that revealed how personally she was taking my rejection of her assistance and alternative vision. Alina, I do not understand why you are being so stubborn about this, Isabella said. I am offering to help you have the wedding you deserve, and you are rejecting that help in favor of what can only be described as a minimal celebration that will embarrass our entire family. Her characterization of my wedding plans as stubborn and embarrassing stung because it dismissed my carefully considered decisions as evidence of poor judgment rather than different priorities. Isabella's inability to accept my choices reflected a broader pattern in our family dynamics where my lifestyle and decisions were frequently viewed as evidence of limitation rather than preference. Isabella, I understand that you want me to have a beautiful wedding, and I appreciate your willingness to contribute financially, I replied. However, you are making assumptions about what I deserve and what would make me happy that do not align with my actual feelings and preferences. The conversation concluded with Isabella expressing her intention to discuss the situation with our parents and explore alternative approaches to ensuring that my wedding would properly represent our family values and standards. Her determination to intervene in my wedding planning reflected both genuine care and a fundamental inability to accept that my choices might be deliberate rather than constrained. After ending the call, I spent several minutes explaining the full conversation to Marcus, who listened with the patient understanding that had characterized his response to my family dynamics throughout our 4-year relationship. Marcus had observed numerous instances where my family members made assumptions about my financial circumstances and professional limitations that were both inaccurate and condescending. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Your sister means well, Marcus observed, but she seems incapable of accepting that you might prefer a simple wedding for reasons that have nothing to do with financial constraints. Marcus's assessment reflected our shared understanding of the complex dynamics that had developed around my decision to maintain privacy about certain aspects of my financial and professional life. While I lived modestly and worked as an elementary school teacher, my actual circumstances were significantly more complex than my family understood or suspected. The teaching position at Roosevelt Elementary represented my primary professional identity and source of personal fulfillment, but it was not my only source of income or professional engagement. Over the past 7 years, I had developed what could be described as a portfolio career that included teaching, educational consulting, curriculum development, and investment activities that had created financial security extending far beyond my teaching salary. My decision to maintain privacy about these additional income sources and professional activities stemmed from multiple considerations that related to family dynamics, professional relationships, and personal preferences about privacy and autonomy. Revealing the full scope of my financial circumstances would likely create new complications and expectations that I preferred to avoid. The educational consulting work had begun during my 3rd year of teaching, when the Portland Public Schools District contracted me to develop literacy curriculum materials for elementary programs across multiple schools. This project had led to additional consulting opportunities with neighboring districts, private schools, and educational technology companies, seeking expertise in curriculum development and teacher training. The curriculum development work had proven both financially rewarding and professionally satisfying, providing opportunities to influence educational practices beyond my individual classroom, while generating income that significantly supplemented my teaching salary. Over time, these consulting activities, had established my reputation as an expert in elementary literacy education, leading to speaking engagements, workshop facilitation, and ongoing advisory relationships with organizations focused on educational improvement. The investment activities had begun somewhat accidentally when a financial planner recommended by my bank had suggested that my consistent saving and conservative spending created opportunities for building long-term wealth through strategic investment in index funds and municipal bonds. What started as modest monthly contributions to retirement accounts had evolved into a more sophisticated investment strategy that included real estate investment trusts, dividend-focused stock portfolios, and educational sector investments that aligned with my professional expertise. The combined income from teaching, consulting, and investment activities had created financial security that exceeded what most people would expect from an elementary school teacher. However, I had deliberately maintained my modest lifestyle and spending patterns for reasons that included both personal preference and strategic considerations about family relationships and professional dynamics. Marcus was aware of my complete financial picture and understood my reasons for maintaining privacy about income sources beyond teaching. He supported my decision to live modestly despite having resources that would enable a more expensive lifestyle, and he shared my preference for weddings that reflected values rather than financial capacity. The $500 wedding budget we had established represented a deliberate choice to focus on the meaning of our commitment rather than the expense of our celebration. We had planned a ceremony in Washington Park's Rose Garden, followed by a reception in the nearby pavilion with refreshments provided by a local bakery and simple decorations that we would create ourselves. Our guest list included 30 people who represented the most important relationships in our lives, including immediate family members, close friends, and professional colleagues, who had supported our relationship and individual growth. The simplicity of our plan reflected both practical considerations and philosophical beliefs about marriage, community, and the appropriate focus for wedding celebration. However, Isabella's phone call had made clear that my family's perception of our wedding plans was significantly different from our own understanding of their meaning and appropriateness. The gap between my family's expectations and my actual circumstances was creating tension that would likely escalate unless addressed through direct communication or external events that clarified the situation. That evening, Marcus and I discussed the potential implications of Isabella's stated intention to involve our parents in convincing me to accept a more elaborate wedding celebration. We anticipated that additional family pressure would follow, and we considered various approaches to managing these conversations while maintaining our commitment to our original plan. The challenge is that explaining why you can afford a more expensive wedding but prefer not to have one requires revealing information you want to keep private, Marcus observed. Your family assumes that budget constraints are driving your decisions, and correcting that assumption would create different complications. Marcus's analysis accurately captured the dilemma that Isabella's intervention had created. Defending our wedding choices would require either accepting characterizations of financial limitation that were inaccurate, or revealing financial information that I preferred to keep private for multiple legitimate reasons. The weekend concluded with my recognition that the wedding planning process was likely to become significantly more complicated due to family pressure and expectations that diverged sharply from our own preferences. However, I remained committed to our original plan and confident that our choices reflected thoughtful consideration of our values, circumstances, and long-term goals. The coming weeks would test this commitment. Isabella escalated her campaign to convince me to accept what she viewed as appropriate financial support for a wedding that would properly represent our family's values and social standing. The tension between my actual circumstances and my family's perceptions would ultimately reach a breaking point that would transform our relationships in ways none of us anticipated. As I prepared for another week of teaching fourth-grade students, who filled my classroom with energy and curiosity, I had no way of knowing that Isabella's intervention would ultimately lead to revelations that would change how my family understood both my life and my choices. The modest teacher they thought they knew was about to be revealed as someone quite different, and the implications of that revelation would extend far beyond wedding planning into fundamental questions about family identity and the assumptions we make about the people closest to us. The intervention Isabella had orchestrated arrived exactly 1 week after our phone conversation, delivered in the form of an urgent family meeting scheduled for the following Sunday evening. The summons came through a group text message that included our parents and Diego, with language that suggested both the importance of the gathering and the seriousness of the issues to be discussed. Family meeting Sunday 6 p.m. at Mom and Dad's house, Isabella had written. We need to address Elena's wedding situation before it becomes a bigger problem. Everyone needs to be. The characterization of my wedding plans as a situation requiring intervention and potentially becoming a bigger problem revealed the extent to which Isabella had convinced our parents that my choices represented a crisis requiring collective family action. The mandatory tone of her message suggested that she had already secured parental support for whatever approach she intended to propose. Marcus and I arrived at my parents' Beaverton home precisely at 6 o'clock, carrying a bottle of wine and the mental preparation necessary for what we anticipated would be a challenging conversation about wedding planning, family expectations, and financial boundaries. The Rodriguez family home reflected the comfortable middle-class lifestyle my parents had built through decades of steady employment in education and municipal services. Miguel Rodriguez had worked for 32 years as a facilities manager for the Beaverton School District, earning respect from colleagues and steady advancement through supervisory roles that culminated in his current position, overseeing maintenance operations for 12 elementary and middle schools. Carmen Rodriguez had spent 28 years as a bilingual education coordinator for the same district, developing programs that supported Spanish-speaking students and families while building relationships with community organizations throughout Washington County. Their combined careers in public education had provided financial stability, home ownership, and the ability to support their children's educational pursuits without accumulating significant debt. However, their income and savings were modest compared to the lifestyle Isabella had achieved through her corporate career, and they remained proud of their practical approach to financial management and their emphasis on education over material accumulation. The living room had been arranged for what appeared to be a formal family conference, with chairs positioned in a circle that encouraged direct conversation and ensured that all participants would be visible to each other throughout the discussion. Isabella had arrived early and assumed a position that suggested her role as meeting facilitator, with documents and notes that indicated extensive preparation for the presentation she intended to deliver. Our parents welcomed Marcus and me with their typical warmth, but I detected undertones of concern and discomfort that suggested Isabella's campaign had created anxiety about my wedding plans and their potential implications. Diego arrived several minutes after us, carrying takeout coffee and wearing the slightly confused expression of someone who was unsure about why his presence had been required for a discussion about wedding planning. Elena, we asked you here tonight because we are concerned about the decisions you are making regarding your wedding celebration, Carmen began, using the gentle but firm tone she had perfected during years of parent-teacher conferences and family discussions about important decisions. Isabella has explained your budget constraints and your determination to proceed with minimal celebration, and we want to discuss alternatives that would better reflect the importance of this milestone and our family's commitment to supporting your happiness. Miguel added, clearly echoing arguments that Isabella had presented during previous conversations. The coordinated nature of their opening statements revealed that Isabella had conducted extensive preparation for this intervention, including coaching our parents about the points they should emphasize and the outcomes they should see. The characterization of my $500 budget as evidence of constraints rather than preferences demonstrated how effectively Isabella had framed the issue in terms that would generate parental concern and motivation to intervene. Isabella proceeded to deliver a comprehensive presentation about wedding planning, family tradition, and the social implications of celebration choices that demonstrated both her professional skills in persuasive communication and her genuine conviction that intervention was necessary to prevent what she viewed as a significant mistake. Elena's wedding will be remembered and discussed by our extended family, our parents' friends, and our professional communities for years to come. Isabella explained using visual aids that included photographs of recent family weddings and cost comparisons between different celebration options. A $500 wedding will inevitably be perceived as evidence that our family either cannot afford appropriate celebration or does not value Elena's happiness enough to contribute meaningfully to her special day. Neither perception accurately represents our circumstances or our feelings, but both perceptions will have lasting consequences for our family's reputation and Elena's relationship. Isabella's presentation included detailed financial analysis that demonstrated her research into wedding costs, venue options, and vendor services throughout the Portland metropolitan area. She had prepared spreadsheets showing budget allocations for different celebration levels, timeline charts indicating optimal planning sequences, and vendor recommendation lists that reflected her thorough investigation of local wedding service providers. I have researched 17 venues that could accommodate celebrations ranging from 40 to 100 guests, Isabella continued, distributing printed materials that included photographs, capacity information, and pricing details for each location. The Riverside Lodge remains my top recommendation because their comprehensive packages include ceremony space, reception facilities, catering services, basic decorations, and coordination support that would eliminate much of the stress and complexity associated with wedding planning. The thoroughness of Isabella's research was impressive and demonstrated genuine commitment to ensuring that my wedding would be beautiful, memorable, and appropriate for what she considered family standards. Her willingness to invest significant time and energy in developing alternatives to my current plan revealed both her care for my happiness and her determination to convince me that change was necessary. However, Isabella's presentation also revealed fundamental assumptions about my circumstances, preferences, and decision-making process that were both inaccurate and presumptuous. She had approached wedding planning as a problem-solving exercise where insufficient funding represented the primary obstacle to appropriate celebration, and she had developed solutions that addressed financial constraints without considering whether those constraints were real or chosen. Isabella has offered to contribute $4,000 towards celebration costs, and your father and I would like to contribute an additional $2,000, Carmen announced, clearly delivering information that had been coordinated in advance with Isabella's presentation. Diego has also expressed willingness to contribute $1,000, which would provide a total family contribution of $7,000 toward wedding expenses, Miguel added. Glancing toward Diego, who nodded agreement, despite appearing somewhat surprised by the specific dollar amount being attributed to his commitment. The family contribution offer totaled $7,000, which when combined with Marcus's and my $500 budget, would enable the $8,000 celebration at Riverside Lodge that Isabella had been promoting. The coordination and specificity of this offer demonstrated extensive planning and represented a significant financial commitment from family members whose own resources were limited. We want you to have the wedding you deserve, Carmen continued, and we are prepared to make this investment because we love you and want to celebrate this important milestone appropriately. The emotional weight of their offer was considerable. My parents were proposing to contribute money they had undoubtedly saved carefully over many years, and Isabella was offering an amount that represented a significant portion of her annual discretionary income. Diego's contribution, while smaller, reflected his willingness to support my wedding despite having limited savings as a young professional building his own financial foundation. Their collective generosity was motivated by love and genuine desire to ensure that my wedding would be memorable and meaningful.
However, their offer was based on assumptions about my financial circumstances that were inaccurate, and accepting their contribution would require either perpetuating those misunderstandings or revealing information I preferred to keep private. I am deeply grateful for your willingness to contribute to my wedding celebration, I responded carefully, and I understand that your offer comes from love and desire to support my happiness. However, Marcus and I remain committed to our current plan because it reflects our values and our vision for how we want to begin our marriage. The response to my polite but firm rejection was immediate and intense. Isabella's expression shifted from hopeful anticipation to frustrated disappointment, while our parents exchanged glances that suggested confusion about my continued resistance to what they viewed as an obviously beneficial offer. Elena, I do not understand why you are rejecting help that would enable you to have a beautiful wedding, Carmen said, her voice carrying the hurt of someone whose generous offer had been dismissed without adequate explanation. "We are not asking you to accept charity," Miguel added. "We are offering to invest in your happiness because you are our daughter, and this is an important family celebration." Diego, who had remained silent throughout the presentation and discussion, finally spoke with the directness that characterized his approach to family dynamic. "Elena, your wedding plans sound like something college students would organize because they have no money. You are 31 years old with a career and a serious relationship. Why are you planning a wedding that belongs in a dorm room?" His characterization stung because it dismissed my carefully considered choices as evidence of immaturity or financial desperation. Diego's comment reflected the broader family assumption that my modest lifestyle indicated limitation rather than preference, and that my wedding plans represented compromise rather than intentional design. Marcus, who had been listening quietly throughout the intervention, finally entered the conversation with the diplomatic approach he had developed for navigating my family dynamics while supporting my decision. "We appreciate the family's generosity and concern for our wedding celebration," Marcus said. "Elena and I have discussed various options extensively, and we believe our current plan will create exactly the kind of meaningful, intimate celebration that aligns with our values and relationship." Isabella's response to Marcus's statement revealed her frustration with what she perceived as our stubborn resistance to obvious improvement opportunities. "Marcus, I respect your desire to support Elena's decisions, but you need to help her understand the broader implications of this choice. Your wedding will be attended by Elena's professional colleagues, family friends, and extended family members who will draw conclusions about your financial stability, family support, and priorities based on what they observe." Her argument emphasized social perception and professional reputation in ways that revealed her own concerns about image management and community standing. Isabella's corporate career had reinforced her belief that public perception significantly influenced professional opportunities and social relationships, and she was genuinely worried that my modest wedding would damage my reputation in ways that could have lasting consequences. "The teachers at Elena's school will be invited to this celebration," Isabella continued, building her case for the importance of proper presentation. "Her principal, her colleagues, and the parents of her students will form opinions about her circumstances and choices based on what they experience at her wedding. These perceptions could influence her professional relationships and advancement opportunities." Isabella's concern about professional implications reflected her own experience in corporate environments where personal brand and lifestyle choices were frequently evaluated as indicators of competence, ambition, and cultural. Her worry that my modest wedding could damage my professional reputation was genuine and based on her understanding of how public celebrations influenced professional relationships. However, Isabella's analysis was based on incomplete information about my professional circumstances and relationships. She was unaware that my colleagues at Roosevelt Elementary already understood my preference for modest lifestyle choices, and she did not know about my educational consulting work, curriculum development projects, and advisory relationships that had established my professional reputation far beyond my individual school bill. The intervention continued for another hour as family members presented various arguments, designed to convince me that accepting their financial contribution would benefit not only my wedding celebration, but also my relationships, reputation, and long-term happiness. Their persistence reflected genuine love and concern, but it also revealed their inability to accept that my choices might be deliberate rather than constrained. Carmen appealed to tradition and family values, emphasizing the importance of celebration in marking life transitions and bringing families together in support of important milestones. Miguel focused on practical considerations about guest comfort, vendor reliability, and event coordination that would be enhanced through professional venue services and catering support. Isabella presented additional research about photography services, floral arrangements, and entertainment options that would be available within the enhanced budget their contributions would provide. Diego, despite his earlier criticism, offered to coordinate transportation arrangements, and guest communications that would simplify planning logistics. Each family member contributed perspectives and offers of support that demonstrated their collective commitment to ensuring that my wedding would be successful and memorable. Their intervention was motivated by love and delivered with generosity that reflected the strong family bonds that had supported all of us throughout our lives. However, their continued pressure to accept their vision for my wedding also revealed fundamental assumptions about my circumstances and judgment that were both inaccurate and condescending. The intervention was premised on the belief that I was making poor decisions due to financial limitations and lack of understanding about social expectations, assumptions that prevented them from considering that my choices might be intentional and well-informed. The evening concluded with my renewed commitment to our original wedding plan, despite the emotional weight of disappointing family members who genuinely wanted to contribute to my happiness. Marcus and I left my parents' house with the understanding that our decision had created significant family tension that would likely influence our relationships for months to come. During the drive home, Marcus and I processed the emotional intensity of the intervention and discussed strategies for managing ongoing family pressure while maintaining our commitment to wedding plans that reflected our actual preferences and circumstances. "Your family's offer was incredibly generous," Marcus observed, "but accepting it would require either lying about why you can afford to decline their help or revealing information you want to keep private about your consulting work and investment." Marcus accurately identified the dilemma that Isabella's intervention had created. Defending our wedding choices required either accepting characterizations of financial limitation that were false, or revealing financial information that I preferred to keep confidential for multiple legitimate reasons. The week following the family intervention brought daily text messages from Isabella with additional venue options, vendor recommendations, and deadline reminders about booking services for spring wedding date. Her persistence demonstrated both her commitment to changing my mind and her inability to accept that my decision was final and based on careful consideration rather than ignorance or stubbornness. Carmen called twice during the week to revisit the conversation and explore whether compromise positions might be possible that would enable some enhancement of our celebration while respecting our desire for simplicity. Miguel sent articles about wedding planning and family traditions that he hoped might influence my perspective about the importance of appropriate celebration. The family pressure was intense and emotionally challenging because it came from people who loved me and genuinely wanted to contribute to my happiness. However, their continued inability to accept my choices was also frustrating because it revealed their assumption that my decisions were evidence of poor judgment rather than different priorities. As Marcus and I continued our wedding planning according to our original timeline and budget, I began to understand that the conflict with my family represented broader issues about autonomy, respect, and the assumptions families make about individual circumstances and choices. The resolution of our wedding planning dispute would ultimately require either capitulation to family pressure or revelation of information that would fundamentally change how my family understood my life and circumstance. The stage was being set for confrontations that would extend far beyond wedding planning into fundamental questions about family relationships, individual autonomy, and the respect owed to adult children who make choices that differ from parental expectations and sibling advice. The wedding that was intended to celebrate my commitment to Marcus was becoming a battleground for much larger issues about independence, recognition, and family dynamics that had been developing for years beneath the surface of our relationships. The weeks following the family intervention transformed my previously peaceful routine into a sustained campaign of persuasion that tested both my resolve and my relationship with family members who remained convinced that intervention was necessary to prevent what they viewed as a catastrophic mistake. Isabella's efforts evolved from direct confrontation into a sophisticated strategy that involved extended family members, professional contacts, and community connections, in ways that demonstrated both her determination and her misunderstanding of my actual circumstances. The escalation began 3 days after the family meeting when my maternal grandmother, Esperanza Morales, called from her home in Sacramento with concerns that had clearly been cultivated through conversations with Isabella. At 83 years old, Esperanza commanded tremendous respect within our extended family due to her role as matriarch, her wisdom accumulated through decades of marriage and child-rearing, and her reputation for providing practical guidance during family crises and important decisions. Misha, Isabella tells me you are planning to marry in a park with sandwiches and paper plates. Esperanza began without preamble, her voice carrying the gentle authority that had influenced 3 generations of family decisions. I understand that young people today have different ideas about money and celebration, but marriage is a sacred commitment that deserves proper recognition and blessing. The characterization of my wedding plans as sandwiches and paper plates revealed how Isabella had presented my choices to extended family members, emphasizing elements that would generate concern about appropriateness and dignity rather than explaining my actual vision for intimate celebration in beautiful outdoor settings, with thoughtfully selected refreshments and meaningful personal touch. Abuela, Marcus and I have planned a ceremony in the Washington Park Rose Garden, which is one of the most beautiful locations in Portland. I explained, attempting to correct misconceptions about our celebration while respecting her concerns about tradition and family value. We will have professional photography, meaningful music, and refreshments that reflect our preferences, rather than conventional wedding expectations. Esperanza's response revealed both her love for me and her absorption of Isabella's framing about the inadequacy of my current plan. Elena, you are my first granddaughter to marry, and this celebration will be remembered by our family for generations. Your children and grandchildren will look at photographs and hear stories about your wedding day. Do you want them to see evidence that their family could not provide appropriate celebration for such an important milestone? Her appeal to legacy and family history carried significant emotional weight, because it connected my individual choices to broader family narratives and future generations who would inherit our family stories and traditions. Esperanza's concern reflected genuine love and desire to ensure that my wedding would contribute positively to family memory and identity rather than becoming a source of regret or embarrassment. However, her perspective was influenced by cultural and generational expectations about wedding celebrations that differed significantly from my own values and preferences. Esperanza's understanding of appropriate celebration had been formed during an era when family financial sacrifice for wedding expenses demonstrated love and commitment, and when community recognition of marital ceremonies served important social functions that validated family status and relationships. The conversation with Esperanza continued for 45 minutes, as she shared stories about family weddings from previous generations, emphasized the importance of celebration in marking life transitions, and expressed concern about my apparent willingness to accept minimal recognition for what she viewed as the most important day of my adult life. Her persistence reflected both her genuine care for my happiness and her conviction that my choices represented either financial desperation or misguided priorities that required correction. Isabella says your family has offered to help with expenses, but you have refused their generosity, Esperanza continued, her tone suggesting confusion about my decision to decline assistance that would enable more elaborate celebration. Pride is admirable, Mija, but marriage is not the time for pride. This is the time for accepting love and support from family members who want to honor your happiness. The characterization of my decision as pride rather than preference revealed how Isabella had framed my resistance to family financial contribution. By suggesting that pride was preventing me from accepting help, Isabella had positioned my autonomy as character flaw rather than legitimate choice, making it easier for family members to justify continued pressure and intervention. The call with Esperanza concluded with her expressing hope that I would reconsider my decision and allow family members to contribute to what she termed appropriate celebration worthy of Rodriguez family tradition. Her gentle but persistent pressure reflected the family consensus that Isabella had successfully cultivated about the inadequacy of my current plans and the necessity of continued intervention. The following week brought similar calls from my paternal Aunt Rosa, who lived in Seattle and served as the unofficial family coordinator for major celebrations and life events. Rosa had organized graduation parties, anniversary celebrations, and birthday festivities for extended family members throughout the Pacific Northwest, and her reputation for creating memorable events had established her as an authority on celebration planning and family tradition. Alina, I have been discussing your wedding situation with your parents and Isabella, and I want to offer my assistance with planning and coordination, Rosa began, clearly positioning herself as additional family resource for improving my celebration rather than supporting my current choices. I have connections with vendors throughout Oregon and Washington who could provide excellent services within reasonable budget parameters. Rosa's offer reflected both genuine desire to help and assumption that my wedding plans indicated lack of access to appropriate resources, rather than deliberate choice to celebrate simply. Her professional experience in event coordination had created extensive vendor relationships and planning expertise that she believed would address what she perceived as logistical challenges, preventing me from organizing more elaborate celebrations. I understand that teacher salaries create budget limitations, Rosa continued, but wedding expenses should not fall entirely on the couple. Family contribution is traditional and appropriate, especially when parents and siblings are financially capable of supporting beautiful celebration. The conversation revealed that Rosa had been thoroughly briefed about my circumstances and family offers of financial assistance, and that she was prepared to contribute her own planning expertise and vendor connections to enhance whatever celebration budget could be assembled through family contributions and my modest resource. Rosa proceeded to describe vendor relationships she had developed through years of family event planning, including photographers who specialized in outdoor ceremonies, caterers who provided elegant but affordable reception services, and musicians who performed at intimate celebrations in parks and gardens throughout the Portland area. Her vendor recommendations addressed practical aspects of wedding planning while assuming that my resistance to more elaborate celebrations stemmed from inexperience or limited access to appropriate services. Isabella mentioned that you are planning to handle photography yourself, but wedding photography requires professional expertise to ensure that memories are preserved properly, Rosa explained, transitioning into detailed discussion of photographer portfolios and service packages that would be available within enhanced budget parameters. These photographs will be treasured by your family for decades, and amateur photography cannot provide the quality and reliability that such important memories deserve. Her emphasis on professional photography reflected broader concerns about quality and permanence that motivated family pressure for enhanced celebration. Rosa and other family members viewed wedding planning decisions through the lens of lifetime memory creation and family legacy building, while I approached the same decisions through the lens of values alignment and authentic expression of relationship priority. The disconnect between our perspectives created ongoing conflict because both approaches were legitimate, but incompatible. Family members were motivated by love and genuine desire to ensure that my wedding would create positive memories and demonstrate appropriate family support, while Marcus and I were motivated by desire to begin our marriage with celebration that reflected our actual values and preferences, rather than conventional expectations or social pressure. The campaign intensified further when Isabella enlisted Sofia Guerrero, my former colleague from Roosevelt Elementary, who had transitioned into administrative roles within the Portland Public Schools District. Sophia had maintained friendly professional relationships with numerous teachers throughout the district, and her position as curriculum coordinator provided her with broad visibility and influence within local education community. Alina, Isabella reached out to me because she is concerned about the impression your wedding plans might create within your professional community, Sophia explained, during a coffee meeting that had been arranged through Isabella's coordination. She asked me to discuss the importance of professional image management and community relationship building for teachers who aspire to advancement within the district. The involvement of professional contacts in family wedding planning discussions represented a significant escalation in Isabella's campaign and demonstrated her determination to apply pressure through multiple channels simultaneously. Sophia's willingness to participate in these discussions revealed either her genuine concern about my professional reputation or her inability to recognize the inappropriateness of workplace colleagues intervening in personal family decisions. Isabella explained that your family has offered financial support for more substantial celebration, but you have declined their assistance in favor of minimal park ceremony, Sophia continued, clearly repeating talking points that Isabella had provided during their conversation. I wanted to discuss the potential implications of this choice for your relationships with colleagues, administrators, and parent communities, who will be invited to witness your celebration. Sophia's concern about professional implications reflected Isabella's corporate perspective about the importance of image management and reputation building for career advance. However, Sophia's analysis was based on incomplete information about my professional circumstances, advancement prospects, and relationship dynamics within education communities that valued authenticity and practical resource management over elaborate display of wealth or status. The conversation with Sophia revealed the extent to which Isabella had researched my professional environment and identified contacts who might provide additional perspective about the importance of appropriate celebration for career development and community relationship building. Isabella's systematic approach to building pressure through multiple family and professional channels demonstrated both her strategic thinking skills and her fundamental misunderstanding of my actual circumstances and priorities. Alina, your teaching colleagues will form lasting impressions about your financial stability, family support, and personal priorities based on what they experience at your wedding, Sophia explained, warming to her theme about professional reputation management. These impressions could influence their willingness to collaborate with you on curriculum projects, recommend you for leadership opportunities, or support your candidacy for administrative positions. The analysis Sophia presented was logical from the perspective of conventional career advancement within hierarchical organizations, where personal brand and lifestyle choices influenced professional opportunity. However, her recommendations were based on assumptions about my career aspirations and professional relationships that were inaccurate and failed to account for my established reputation and alternative income sources. The meeting with Sophia concluded with her expressing hope that I would reconsider my current plans and accept family assistance that would enable celebration more appropriate for someone with my education, experience, and professional potential. Her perspective reflected genuine concern about my career development combined with acceptance of Isabella's framing about the inadequacy of my current wedding vision. The sustained pressure from extended family members and professional contacts created emotional stress that tested my commitment to original wedding plans, while reinforcing my determination to maintain autonomy over personal decisions. The involvement of multiple people in what should have been private family discussions revealed the extent to which Isabella was willing to escalate her campaign, and the degree to which family members were willing to participate in coordinated intervention efforts. Marcus observed the growing intensity of family pressure with concern about the emotional toll these conversations were taking, and the potential for permanent damage to family relationships if the conflict continued to escalate. His support for my position remained unwavering, but he recognized that continued resistance to family pressure was creating stress that extended beyond wedding planning into broader questions about autonomy, respect, and boundaries within family systems. Your family's involvement of extended relatives and professional contacts suggests that they are not going to accept your decision without continued escalation, Marcus noted during one of our evening conversations about the ongoing pressure campaign. We need to consider whether maintaining privacy about your consulting work and investments is worth the relationship damage that this conflict is creating. Marcus accurately identified the fundamental dilemma that Isabella's campaign had created. Defending our wedding choices required either accepting ongoing family pressure based on inaccurate assumptions about our circumstances, or revealing information about my professional accomplishments and financial resources that I preferred to keep private for multiple legitimate reasons. The decision to maintain privacy about my consulting work and investment activities was based on considerations that included family relationship dynamics, professional boundary management, and personal preferences about autonomy and recognition. Revealing my complete financial picture would resolve the immediate conflict about wedding planning, but it would also create new complications and expectations that might prove more challenging to manage than current family pressure. The consulting work I had developed over 7 years included curriculum development projects with multiple school districts, educational technology companies, and nonprofit organizations focused on literacy education and teacher professional development. These projects provided significant income that supplemented my teaching salary while building my reputation as expert in elementary education and instructional design. The investment activities had grown from modest retirement savings into sophisticated portfolio management that included real estate investment trusts, dividend-focused equity holdings, and municipal bond investments that generated passive income substantially exceeding my teaching salary. The combination of consulting income and investment returns had created financial security that enabled generous charitable giving, travel opportunities, and lifestyle choices that extended far beyond typical teacher resources. However, revealing this information would require explaining why I had chosen to maintain modest lifestyle and continue teaching elementary school despite having resources that would enable different career choices and living arrangements. These explanations would inevitably lead to family questions about my priorities, values, and long-term plans that I preferred to answer on my own timeline rather than in response to wedding planning pressure. The escalating family campaign continued throughout the month with additional calls from cousins who lived in California, family friends who had attended previous Rodriguez celebrations, and community members who had been enlisted by Isabella to provide perspective about wedding planning and family support expectations. Each conversation followed similar patterns of expressing concern about my choices, emphasizing the generosity of family financial offers, and encouraging reconsideration of plans that were viewed as inadequate for someone with my education and family background. The cumulative effect of these conversations was emotionally exhausting and professionally disruptive as family members contacted me during school hours with urgent concerns about wedding planning deadlines and vendor availability. The sustained pressure created stress that affected my teaching performance and required explanation to school administrators about family emergency situations that were generating frequent interruptions during instructional time. The situation reached a turning point when Isabella arranged what she described as a venue tour that would demonstrate the difference between professional wedding facilities and park pavilion celebrations. She had coordinated with Carmen to invite me to visit 3 wedding venues during a weekend afternoon, ostensibly to provide objective comparison information that would inform my final decisions about celebration location and scope. The proposed venue tour represented Isabella's most direct attempt to influence my decision through experiential evidence about the quality and appropriateness of professional wedding facilities compared to public park locations. Her strategy reflected confidence that seeing beautiful venues and professional services would convince me that family financial contributions would enable substantially better celebration than my current modest plan. However, the venue tour would also provide the setting for revelations that would fundamentally transform family understanding of my circumstances and capability. The weekend that Isabella had planned as final persuasion campaign would instead become the moment when hidden aspects of my professional and financial life would be revealed in ways that would shock family members and validate the choices they had been pressuring me to abandon. The venue tour that Isabella had orchestrated as her final persuasion campaign began on a crisp Saturday morning in late October with autumn leaves, creating a golden backdrop for what she believed would be the definitive demonstration of why professional wedding facilities surpassed park pavilion celebration.
Isabella had arranged appointments at 3 premier wedding venues throughout the Portland area, each representing different price points and styles that would showcase the range of options available within the enhanced budget that family contributions would provide. Carmen had agreed to participate in the venue tour as additional voice of experience and maternal perspective, while Isabella had invited Marcus and me under the pretense of providing objective comparison information that would inform our final wedding planning decisions. The tour schedule had been carefully planned to maximize impact, beginning with the most impressive venue and concluding with practical discussions about vendor coordination and celebration logistics. The first destination was Grandview Estate, an elegant wedding venue located in the hills west of Portland that offered panoramic views of the Willamette Valley and Mount Hood. The property featured historic stone buildings, manicured gardens, and reception facilities that had hosted celebrations for Portland's most prominent families throughout the past century. Grandview Estate represented the premium option that would require the full $8,000 budget that Isabella had proposed, but it offered comprehensive services and luxurious accommodations that she believed would demonstrate the value of professional venue selection. During the drive to Grandview Estate, Isabella reviewed her strategy for the venue presentations and emphasized key points that she hoped would convince me to reconsider my current wedding plans. Her approach reflected months of research and preparation,
and she was confident that seeing professional facilities would provide the compelling evidence that previous conversations had failed to deliver. Elena, I want you to approach these venue tours with an open mind about what becomes possible when you have appropriate budget and professional coordination. Isabella explained as we drove through the winding roads that led to Grandview Estate. The venues we will see today represent the difference between settling for minimal celebration and creating memories that will be treasured for decades. Marcus and I exchanged glances that reflected our shared understanding of Isabella's intentions and our continued commitment to original wedding plans regardless of what impressive facilities we might observe during the tour. However, we had agreed to participate in the venue visits both to demonstrate respect for Isabella's efforts and to avoid creating additional family conflict through refusal to consider alternatives. Carmen added her perspective about the importance of keeping an open mind about celebration options and venue selection. Elena, your father and I want you to have the wedding you will remember with joy and pride, she said. These venues offer services and amenities that would eliminate much of the stress and uncertainty associated with outdoor celebrations in public parks. The approach to Grandview Estate revealed the impressive scope and elegance of the property, with stone entrance gates, professionally landscaped grounds, and historic buildings that conveyed both luxury and tradition. Isabella's satisfaction with our initial reactions was evident as she pointed out architectural details, garden features, and scenic views that demonstrated why Grandview Estate commanded premium pricing and maintained reputation as one of Portland's most prestigious wedding venues. The venue tour began with Rebecca Morrison, the events coordinator at Grandview Estate, who provided comprehensive overview of facilities, services, and celebration packages available for different budget levels and guest count. Rebecca's presentation was polished and professional, reflecting years of experience in wedding coordination and deep knowledge of vendor relationships, logistical considerations, and timeline management that contributed to successful celebration. Grandview Estate offers complete wedding packages that include ceremony space, reception facilities, catering services, floral arrangements, photography coordination, and day of planning support, Rebecca explained as she guided us through the property's various event spaces. Our comprehensive approach eliminates the stress and complexity associated with coordinating multiple vendors, while ensuring that every aspect of your celebration reflects the elegance and attention to detail that your special day deserves. The ceremony space was undeniably beautiful, featuring a stone terrace overlooking the valley with professional lighting, sound systems, and seating arrangements that could accommodate up to 100 guests in comfort and style. The reception facility included a historic ballroom with cathedral ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and French doors that opened to garden terraces where cocktail service and dancing could extend outdoor celebrations throughout the evening. Isabella's commentary throughout the tour emphasized the differences between professional venue services and the challenges associated with outdoor celebrations and public facilities. Elena, notice how every detail has been planned to ensure guest comfort and celebration success, she said, gesturing toward the climate-controlled environments, professional audio equipment, and backup plans for weather contingencies that Grandview Estate provided. Carmen was clearly impressed with the venue facilities and began asking detailed questions about catering options, vendor coordination, and timeline planning that would be included in comprehensive wedding packages. Her enthusiasm reflected both genuine appreciation for the quality and elegance of Grandview Estate and growing conviction that professional venues offered significant advantages over the Park Pavilion celebration that Marcus and I had planned. The tour continued for 90 minutes as Rebecca demonstrated various spaces, explained service offerings, and provided pricing information for different celebration levels and guest count. The $8,000 package that Isabella had researched would include ceremony and reception space, dinner service for 50 guests, basic floral arrangements, photography coordination, and planning support that would handle vendor management and timeline coordination. However, the most significant moment of the venue tour occurred when Rebecca concluded her presentation and prepared to escort us back to the main building for final questions and pricing discussion. As we walked through the garden areas toward the reception facility, Rebecca received a phone call that required immediate attention regarding another client celebration scheduled for later that afternoon. "Miss Chairman, your usual table is ready for the board meeting," Rebecca said into her phone, clearly addressing someone she recognized and regularly served. "We have prepared the Cascade conference room with the materials you requested, and catering will begin service at 2 o'clock as scheduled." The phrase "Mrs. Chairman" stopped me immediately, as it represented a form of address that I had heard countless times over the past 3 years but never in the presence of my family. Rebecca's professional tone and familiarity with the protocol for addressing board chairs indicated that she was speaking with someone who regularly conducted business meetings at Grandview Estate and commanded significant respect within her professional community. Isabella, Carmen, and Marcus had also paused when they heard Rebecca's conversation, though for different reasons than my sudden recognition of familiar workplace dynamics. Isabella appeared pleased that we were observing the venue's professional approach to corporate clients and special events, while Carmen seemed interested in the elegant conference facilities that complemented Grandview Estate's wedding service. Rebecca concluded her phone conversation and turned to continue our tour, but her expression changed dramatically when she observed me directly for the first time since beginning her presentation. The professional courtesy that had characterized her interaction with potential wedding clients transformed into something resembling surprise and confusion as she processed the disconnect between my presence as wedding venue visitor and her recognition of me in entirely different context. "Miss Rodriguez?" Rebecca asked hesitantly, clearly uncertain about how to address the unexpected situation. "I apologize, but I need to clarify something. Are you Elena Rodriguez from the Portland Education Foundation Board?" The question created immediate silence among our group as Isabella, Carmen, and Marcus processed the implications of Rebecca's recognition. Isabella's expression shifted from satisfaction with the venue tour to confusion about why the events coordinator would know me personally, while Carmen appeared surprised that I had professional relationships that she was unaware of. "Yes, I serve on the Portland Education Foundation Board," I confirmed quietly, recognizing that the carefully maintained privacy about my professional activities beyond elementary school teaching was about to be revealed in ways that would transform family understanding of my circumstances and capability. Rebecca's response demonstrated both her professional training and her genuine surprise at discovering my presence in the wedding planning context. "Mrs. Chairman, I had no idea you were planning your wedding celebration. Congratulations on your engagement. If I had known you were the prospective client, I would have arranged entirely different presentation focused on the executive packages that would be more appropriate for someone in your position." The title "Miss Chairman" created immediate shock among my family members, who had never heard me addressed with language that indicated significant professional authority and community leadership. Isabella's confusion was visible as she processed the disconnect between Rebecca's deferential professional tone and her own assumptions about my limited career prospects and financial resources. "Elena serves as chairman of the Portland Education Foundation Board," Carmen asked, clearly seeking clarification about professional relationships and responsibilities that she had been completely unaware of, despite our regular family communications and shared involvement in education-related activity. Rebecca's enthusiasm for explaining my professional role reflected both her respect for my work with the foundation and her assumption that my family members were familiar with my community leadership. "Rodriguez has served as board chairman for the past 2 years and has been instrumental in developing our scholarship programs, community outreach initiatives, and fundraising campaigns that have significantly expanded our impact throughout the Portland metropolitan area." The detailed explanation of my foundation leadership created additional silence, as Isabella, Carmen, and Marcus processed information about professional responsibilities and community recognition that contradicted their understanding of my circumstances and career trajectory. Rebecca's description of my work painted a picture of someone with significant influence, strategic thinking capabilities, and community respect that differed dramatically from the struggling teacher narrative that had motivated family intervention in my wedding plan. The Portland Education Foundation has raised over $2 million during Mrs. Rodriguez's tenure as chairman, Rebecca continued, clearly proud of her venue's association with community leaders and unaware of the family dynamics that her revelation was transformed. Her strategic vision and fundraising expertise have enabled scholarship support for hundreds of students and professional development opportunities for teachers throughout the region. Isabella's response to this information revealed the extent of her shock and confusion about discovering professional accomplishments that I had never mentioned during family conversations about career development and financial circumstances. Elena, you never told us about your work with the Portland Education Foundation, or your role as board chairman, she said, her voice carrying mixture of surprise and hurt about being excluded from significant aspects of my professional life. The venue tour had created exactly the revelation that I had been working to avoid through careful privacy management about my consulting work, foundation leadership, and community involvement activity. Rebecca's assumption that my family members were familiar with my professional accomplishments had exposed information that would inevitably lead to questions about other aspects of my circumstances that I had chosen to keep private. Carmen's reaction reflected both pride in my achievements, confusion about why I had not shared information about professional recognition and community leadership that represented exactly the kind of success that she and Miguel had hoped their children would achieve through education and hard work. Elena, we had no idea about your foundation work or your leadership responsibilities. Why have you never mentioned these accomplishments during our family conversation? The question that Carmen posed reflected the fundamental challenge that my privacy choices had created within family relationships. My decision to maintain separation between my modest lifestyle and my professional accomplishments had enabled me to avoid family expectations and pressures that might have complicated my autonomy. But it had also created information gaps that led to misunderstandings about my circumstances and capabilities. Marcus, who was fully aware of my foundation work and community leadership activity, remained silent during the family processing of Rebecca's revelations, but provided supportive presence as I navigated the unexpected exposure of professional information that I had intended to reveal gradually and on my own terms. Rebecca, recognizing that her enthusiasm about my foundation work had created unexpected family dynamics, attempted to redirect conversation back to wedding planning, while offering to provide enhanced services that would be appropriate for someone with my professional profile and community connection. Mrs. Rodriguez, I would be honored to coordinate your wedding celebration and ensure that it reflects the elegance and distinction that someone in your position deserves, Rebecca offered, clearly attempting to provide solution that would address both my wedding planning needs and the family concerns that Isabella had expressed throughout the venue tour. However, the revelation of my foundation leadership had fundamentally changed the context for ongoing discussions about wedding planning, family financial contributions, and the appropriateness of my modest celebration choice. Isabella's assumption that my $500 budget reflected financial limitations had been undermined by evidence of professional accomplishments that suggested access to resources and opportunities that extended far beyond elementary school teacher salary limitations. The remainder of our time at Grandview Estate passed in relative silence as family members processed the implications of Rebecca's revelations and reconsidered their assumptions about my circumstances and wedding planning decisions. Isabella's confidence about the inadequacy of my current plans had been shaken by evidence that my choices might be based on preferences rather than constraints, while Carmen struggled to understand why I had maintained secrecy about professional achievements that demonstrated exactly the kind of success that parents hope to celebrate and support. The drive to our second venue appointment provided opportunity for family discussion about the foundation leadership revelation and its implications for understanding my wedding planning choices and financial circumstances. Isabella's questions focused on the scope of my foundation responsibilities, the time commitments involved in community leadership, and the professional relationships that such work had developed throughout Portland's education and philanthropic communities. Elena, if you serve as chairman of a foundation that has raised $2 million, you clearly have professional capabilities and community connections that we were not aware of. Isabella said, her tone reflecting both admiration for my accomplishments and confusion about my continued insistence on modest wedding celebration despite evidence of professional success and community recognition. The conversation during our drive to the second venue revealed the extent to which Rebecca's revelation had transformed family understanding of my circumstances and raised questions about other aspects of my professional and financial life that I had chosen to keep private. The foundation leadership represented only one component of my broader portfolio of consulting work, investment, activities, and community involvement that had created financial security and professional recognition extending far beyond my elementary school teaching position. However, explaining the complete scope of my professional accomplishments would require addressing questions about why I had chosen to maintain modest lifestyle and continue classroom teaching despite having resources and opportunities that would enable different career choices and living arrangements. These conversations would inevitably challenge family assumptions about appropriate use of education, professional success, and financial resources that I was not yet prepared to navigate. The venue tour that Isabella had planned as final demonstration of why family financial support was necessary, appropriate wedding celebration had instead become the beginning of revelations that would ultimately validate my autonomous choices and transform family understanding of my circumstances and capabilities. The modest teacher that my family thought they knew was beginning to be revealed as someone quite different, and the implications of this discovery would extend far beyond wedding planning into fundamental questions about family relationships, individual autonomy, and the assumptions we make about the people closest to us. The revelation at Grandview Estate had fundamentally altered the dynamics of our venue tour, transforming what Isabella had intended as persuasive demonstration into uncomfortable family confrontation about professional accomplishments and privacy choices that no one had anticipated addressing during wedding planning discussions. The drive to our second venue appointment unfolded in silence as family members processed the implications of discovering that the struggling teacher they thought they knew was actually a recognized community leader with professional responsibilities and recognition that contradicted their assumptions about my circumstances and capability. Isabella's attempt to continue the venue tour as originally planned became increasingly strained as questions about my foundation leadership overshadowed discussions of wedding facilities and celebration. Her confidence about the inadequacy of my current wedding plans had been undermined by evidence that my modest choices might reflect deliberate preferences rather than financial limitation, forcing her to reconsider the fundamental premises that had motivated months of family intervention and pressure campaigns. Alina, I need to understand why you never mentioned your work with the Portland Education Foundation during any of our conversations about your career or financial circumstances, Isabella said as we approached the second venue, her voice carrying mixture of hurt and confusion about being excluded from significant aspects of my professional life. Board chairmanship of a major community foundation represents exactly the kind of achievement that families celebrate and support, yet you have kept this completely private from all of. The question Isabella posed reflected the core challenge that my privacy choices had created within family relationships. My decision to maintain separation between my modest lifestyle and my professional accomplishments had enabled me to avoid family expectations and pressures that might have complicated my autonomy. But it had also created information gaps that led to fundamental misunderstandings about my circumstances and decision-making capability. Carmen's response to the foundation revelation demonstrated both maternal pride in my achievements and maternal concern about the secrecy that had surrounded these accomplishments. Alina, your father and I have always been proud of your dedication to education and your work with students, but we never imagined that your professional influence extended to community leadership and major fundraising initiatives. Why did you choose to keep these achievements private from your own family? The emotional weight of Carmen's question reflected the depth of her confusion about discovering that her daughter possessed professional recognition and community respect that she had been completely unaware of. Regular family communications and shared involvement in education-related discussions. Her hurt was genuine and understandable, as parents naturally want to celebrate their children's achievements and share in their professional success. Marcus, who understood the complexity of my reasons for maintaining privacy about various professional activities, provided supportive presence during these difficult family conversations, while respecting my need to explain my choices in my own way and on my own time. His awareness of my complete professional portfolio enabled him to appreciate the courage required to maintain autonomy in the face of family pressure, while protecting information that I preferred to reveal gradually. The second venue on Isabella's tour was Riverside Manor, a historic property located along the Willamette River that offered elegant indoor and outdoor celebration spaces, with comprehensive wedding packages designed for medium-sized gatherings. Isabella had selected Riverside Manor as demonstration of more affordable professional venue option that would still provide significant advantages over Park Pavilion celebrations, while requiring smaller family financial contributions than Grandview Estate. However, the venue coordinator at Riverside Manor, Jennifer Wall, recognized me immediately upon our arrival and greeted me with professional familiarity that created additional revelations about my community involvement and professional relationships throughout Portland's nonprofit and philanthropic sector. "Alina, wonderful to see you again," Jennifer said warmly as she welcomed our group to Riverside Manor. "I hope you received the thank you note from our board regarding your consulting work on our capital campaign strategy. Your recommendations have been instrumental in our fundraising success, and we are grateful for your expertise and guidance." The reference to consulting work on capital campaign strategy created immediate silence among my family member, who were still processing the foundation leadership revelation, and now faced evidence of additional professional activities that contradicted their understanding of my career trajectory and income sources. Jennifer's casual mention of my consulting expertise suggested ongoing professional relationships and income sources that extended far beyond elementary school teaching. Isabella's expression reflected growing confusion and frustration as each new piece of information about my professional life challenged her assumptions about my circumstances and the necessity of family intervention in my wedding plan. "Alina provides consulting services for nonprofit fundraising campaigns," she asked, clearly seeking clarification about professional activities that she had been completely unaware of despite our frequent conversations about career development and financial plan. Jennifer's enthusiasm for explaining my consulting work reflected both her respect for my expertise and her assumption that my family members were familiar with my professional activities beyond classroom teaching. "Alina has provided strategic consulting for several major nonprofit organizations throughout the Portland area, helping them develop comprehensive fundraising strategies, donor cultivation programs, and campaign management systems that have significantly improved their development capability." The detailed explanation of my consulting work painted a picture of someone with specialized expertise, professional reputation, and income sources that differed dramatically from the limited career prospects that had motivated family concerns about my financial circumstances and wedding planning choices. Jennifer's description suggested ongoing professional relationships and consulting income that would substantially supplement elementary school teacher salary. Carmen's reaction to this information revealed both pride in my professional accomplishments and growing concern about the extent of professional activities that I had chosen to keep private from family members who loved me and wanted to support my success. "Alina, consulting work with major nonprofit organizations represents significant professional achievement and expertise development. Why have you never mentioned these consulting relationships during our family discussions about your career?" The question that Carmen posed reflected the fundamental tension between my desire for privacy and autonomy and my family's natural desire to understand and celebrate my professional accomplishments. My consulting work had developed organically from my foundation leadership and education expertise, creating opportunities for strategic advisory relationships that provided both professional satisfaction and financial compensation while enabling me to maintain primary identity as elementary school teacher. However, explaining the scope and significance of my consulting activities would inevitably lead to questions about why I continued teaching elementary school despite having professional opportunities and income sources that would enable different career choices and lifestyle arrangements. These conversations would require addressing values and priorities that my family might not understand or support, particularly given their emphasis on career advancement and financial optimization. The venue tour at Riverside Manor proceeded with Jennifer providing detailed information about wedding packages, vendor coordination, and celebration logistics, while my family members continued processing revelations about my professional activities and their implications for understanding my wedding planning decisions and financial circumstances. Isabella's questions about venue services became increasingly mechanical as her attention focused on reassessing her assumptions about my needs and circumstances. The most significant revelation occurred when Jennifer concluded her venue presentation and mentioned her appreciation for my ongoing advisory relationship with the Pacific Northwest Nonprofit Leadership Council, a regional organization that provided professional development and strategic support for nonprofit executives and board members throughout Oregon and Washington. Alina serves on our executive advisory committee and has been instrumental in developing our professional development curriculum for nonprofit board governance and fundraising excellence, Jennifer explained to my increasingly stunned family member. Her expertise in strategic planning and organizational development has enhanced our ability to support nonprofit leaders throughout the region. The reference to executive advisory committees, service, and curriculum development created additional evidence of professional recognition and expertise that contradicted family assumptions about my limited career prospects and financial resources. Jennifer's descriptions suggested ongoing professional relationships and advisory income that further complicated family understanding of my circumstances and wedding planning choices. Isabella's attempt to maintain focus on venue evaluation became impossible as each new revelation about my professional life undermined the fundamental premises that had motivated her intervention campaign. Alina, it appears that you have developed extensive professional relationships and consulting income that we were completely unaware of, she said, her voice reflecting mixture of admiration for my achievements and frustration about being excluded from knowledge of these accomplishments. The drive to our third and final venue appointment provided opportunity for more intensive family discussion about the professional revelations and their implications for understanding my wedding planning choices and financial circumstances. Isabella's questions became more direct as she attempted to understand the scope of my professional activities and their impact on my actual financial resources and capabilities. Alina, if you serve as Foundation Board Chairman, provide consulting services for multiple nonprofit organizations, and participate in regional advisory committees, you clearly have professional income and opportunities that extend far beyond elementary school teaching, Isabella said, her analytical approach reflecting her corporate background in strategic assessment and problem solving. I need to understand why you have maintained secrecy about these professional activities and how they relate to your insistence on a $500 wedding budget.
The direct confrontation that Isabella initiated reflected her growing recognition that the family intervention campaign had been based on inaccurate assumptions about my circumstances and her determination to understand the actual situation before continuing pressure for enhanced wedding celebration. Her professional training in marketing and strategic communication enabled her to recognize that successful persuasion required accurate understanding of audience circumstances and motivations. Carmen's participation in this conversation reflected both maternal concern about my secrecy regarding professional achievements and growing appreciation for the complexity of my career development and community involvement. Alina, we are proud of your professional accomplishments and community leadership, but we are confused about why you chose to keep these achievements private from family members who love you and want to celebrate your success. The family discussion during our drive to the final venue revealed the extent to which the professional revelations had transformed understanding of my circumstances while creating new questions about my motivations for maintaining modest lifestyle and continuing elementary school teaching, despite having professional opportunities and income sources that would enable different choices.
Marcus contributed to this conversation by providing context about my values and priorities that helped explain my choices while respecting my privacy about specific financial details and professional activities that I preferred to discuss privately. Alina's commitment to education and community service reflects deeply held values about making meaningful contributions rather than maximizing personal financial benefit, he explained. Her professional choices prioritize impact and authenticity over conventional markers of success. The third venue appointment was at Garden Terrace, a boutique wedding facility that specialized in intimate celebrations and offered comprehensive packages designed for smaller gatherings with elegant amenities and personalized service. Isabella had selected Garden Terrace as demonstration of how modest budgets could still provide professional venue services and coordination support that would enhance celebration quality while respecting financial constraints. However, the venue coordinator at Garden Terrace, Michael Chen, also recognized me immediately and provided additional evidence of my professional reputation and community involvement that continued the pattern of unexpected revelations about my circumstances and capability. Alina, thank you again for your keynote presentation at our annual fundraising symposium, Michael said as he welcomed our group to Garden Terrace. Your insights about sustainable fundraising strategies and donor relationship management provided valuable guidance for our member organizations, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. The reference to keynote speaking engagements created final confirmation for my family members that my professional influence and recognition extended far beyond their previous understanding. Michael's casual mention of my speaking expertise suggested additional income sources and professional relationships that provided comprehensive picture of someone with significant community respect and financial resources. Isabella's response to this revelation reflected both exhaustion from processing multiple professional discoveries and recognition that her intervention campaign had been fundamentally misdirected. Alina apparently provides keynote speaking services in addition to her foundation leadership, consulting work and advisory committee participation, she said, her voice carrying mixture of admiration and frustration about the extent of professional activities that I had kept private. The cumulative impact of discovering my foundation chairmanship, consulting relationships, advisory committee service, and speaking engagements had completely undermined the family assumptions that had motivated months of pressure campaigns and intervention efforts. Isabella's confidence about the inadequacy of my wedding plans had been replaced by confusion about why someone with my professional accomplishments and income sources would choose modest celebration rather than elaborate demonstration of success and capabilities. The venue tour concluded, Michael providing detailed information about Garden Terrace packages and services, while my family members struggled to process the implications of discovering that the struggling teacher they thought they knew was actually a recognized community leader with multiple income sources and professional opportunities that contradicted every assumption that had motivated their intervention effort. The drive home from Garden Terrace unfolded in contemplative silence as Isabella, Carmen, and Marcus each processed the day's revelations and considered their implications for understanding my wedding planning choices and family relationship dynamics. The professional accomplishments that had been revealed during venue visits painted a picture of someone with financial resources, community recognition, and professional expertise that made family financial assistance unnecessary and family pressure inappropriate. Isabella's eventual acknowledgement of the situation reflected both her professional integrity and her growing understanding of how fundamentally her intervention campaign had been misdirected. Alina, I owe you an apology for making assumptions about your circumstances and pressuring you to accept financial assistance that you clearly do not need, she said. Your professional accomplishments and community leadership demonstrate capabilities and resources that I was completely unaware of, and I should have respected your wedding planning choices rather than attempting to override them. The venue tour that Isabella had planned as final demonstration of why family financial support was necessary for appropriate wedding celebration had instead revealed professional accomplishments and financial independence that validated my autonomous choices and demonstrated the inappropriateness of family intervention effort. The modest teacher that my family thought they knew had been revealed as someone quite different, and the implications of this discovery would require fundamental changes in family relationship dynamics and respect for individual autonomy and decision-making capability. The aftermath of the venue tour revelations necessitated honest conversation about the complete scope of my professional activities and financial circumstances, as the partial disclosures that had emerged throughout the day had created an incomplete picture that required comprehensive explanation to prevent further misunderstandings and family tension. The drive home from Garden Terrace had concluded in contemplative silence, but the questions that Isabella, Carmen, and Marcus carried required addressing through direct communication rather than continued speculation about the implications of my unexpectedly complex professional portfolio. That evening, Marcus and I invited my family members to our apartment for dinner and comprehensive discussion about the professional activities and financial circumstances that had been partially revealed during the venue appointment. The conversation represented my acknowledgement that maintaining privacy about significant aspects of my life had become counterproductive once the foundation leadership became public knowledge, as partial information created more confusion and hurt feelings than complete transparency would generate. The dinner preparation provided opportunity for final consideration of how much information to share and which aspects of my professional and financial circumstances required explanation. Address family concerns while maintaining appropriate boundaries about personal autonomy and decision-making independence. Marcus supported my decision to provide comprehensive disclosure while respecting my preference to control the timing and scope of information sharing rather than responding to external pressure or manipulation. We appreciate your willingness to discuss your professional activities and help us understand circumstances that we were obviously unaware of. Isabella began as we gathered around my modest dining table, which had been set with simple dinnerware that reflected the understated lifestyle choices that had contributed to family assumptions about my financial limitation. Carmen added her perspective about the emotional complexity of discovering significant professional accomplishments that I had chosen to keep private from family members who loved me and wanted to celebrate my success. Lena, we are proud of your achievements and grateful that you are willing to share information that helps us understand your choices and circumstances better than we have previously. The conversation began with my explanation of how the Portland Education Foundation leadership role developed from my initial involvement as volunteer supporter of scholarship programs for students from low-income families who demonstrated academic potential and commitment to educational advancement. My teaching experience at Roosevelt Elementary had provided direct exposure to families facing financial barriers to higher education, motivating my participation in foundation activities that could address systemic challenges affecting student opportunity. The foundation work began during my second year of teaching when I volunteered to help with scholarship application review and student mentoring programs. I explained, providing context for how professional relationships and leadership responsibilities had evolved gradually rather than through deliberate career advancement planning. My classroom experience with students facing educational barriers motivated deeper involvement in addressing systemic issues through community organization and strategic fundraising. The foundation leadership had developed organically as board members recognized my strategic thinking capabilities, educational expertise, and commitment to mission-driven work that prioritized impact over personal recognition or financial benefit. The chairman position had been offered during my fourth year of involvement when the organization needed leadership that could balance educational expertise with fundraising effectiveness and community relationship management. Isabella's questions about foundation leadership focused on the scope of responsibilities, time commitments, and professional relationships that such work require, as her corporate background enabled her to appreciate the complexity of managing nonprofit organizations and coordinating community stakeholder relationships effectively. Lena, serving as board chairman for a major community foundation, represents significant professional responsibility and requires sophisticated leadership capabilities. How have you managed these commitments alongside your teaching responsibility? The question Isabella posed reflected genuine curiosity about my time management and professional prioritization strategies, as well as growing appreciation for the complexity of maintaining multiple professional roles while preserving effectiveness and commitment in each area. Her corporate experience provided framework for understanding the strategic thinking and relationship management skills that nonprofit leadership required. My explanation of foundation responsibilities included oversight of annual budgets exceeding $800,000, coordination of scholarship selection processes that affected hundreds of students annually, and strategic planning for fundraising campaigns that required relationship management with major donors throughout the Portland metropolitan area. The work involved evening meetings, weekend events, and ongoing communication with community leaders, requiring significant time investment beyond regular school hours. The foundation leadership has been professionally rewarding because it enables broader impact on educational opportunities, while complementing my classroom teaching experience, addressing the question about how multiple professional roles supported rather than conflicted with each other. The strategic thinking and community relationship skills that foundation work requires have enhanced my effectiveness as educator and provided perspective about systemic approaches to addressing educational challenges. Carmen's response to learning about the scope of foundation responsibilities reflected both maternal pride in my leadership capabilities and growing understanding of why I might possess financial resources and professional recognition that extended beyond elementary school teacher compensation. Lena, managing major nonprofit organization budgets and coordinating community fundraising campaigns, requires exactly the kind of expertise and leadership that opens opportunities for additional professional relationships and income sources. The transition to discussing consulting work required explanation of how my foundation leadership and educational expertise had generated opportunities for strategic advisory relationships with nonprofit organizations throughout the Pacific Northwest that needed guidance about fundraising effectiveness, board governance, and organizational development strategies. The consulting relationships had developed through professional referrals and reputation building rather than deliberate business development efforts. The consulting work emerged when foundation colleagues began requesting advice about challenges their own organizations were facing with donor cultivation, board engagement, and strategic planning processes, providing context for how consulting income had developed as natural extension of foundation leadership rather than separate career pursuit. These advisory relationships provide opportunities to share expertise while generating additional income that supplements my teaching salary. The consulting projects included comprehensive organizational assessments, strategic plan development, fundraising campaign design, and board training programs that required sophisticated understanding of nonprofit management principles and community relationship dynamics. The work involved both short-term project engagements and ongoing advisory relationships that provided substantial annual income, while enabling flexible scheduling that accommodated teaching responsibilities. Isabella's questions about consulting work focused on client relationships, project scope, and income generation that such professional services typically provided, as her business background enabled her to appreciate the financial potential of specialized consulting expertise within nonprofit sector market. Lena, strategic consulting for major nonprofit organizations, represents significant professional expertise and typically generates income levels that substantially exceed education sector compensation. The acknowledgement that consulting income significantly supplemented my teaching salary required addressing questions about why I continued classroom teaching despite having professional opportunities and financial resources that would enable different career choices and lifestyle arrangement. This conversation touched on fundamental values and priorities that motivated my decisions to maintain modest lifestyle while building financial security through multiple income sources. Teaching remains my primary professional identity because it provides daily meaning and direct impact on student development that consulting work cannot replicate, I explained, addressing the question about career prioritization that my family members found difficult to understand. The consulting income enables financial security and charitable giving while allowing me to continue classroom work that provides personal fulfillment and community contribution. The discussion of investment activities required explanation of how consistent saving from teaching income, combined with consulting revenues and conservative spending patterns, had created opportunities for building long-term wealth through strategic portfolio management and real estate investment activity. The investment approach focused on dividend-generating stocks, municipal bonds, and real estate investment trusts that provided passive income while preserving capital for future growth. The investment portfolio began with modest retirement contributions during my first year of teaching and evolved into more sophisticated wealth-building strategy as consulting income provided additional capital for market participation, providing overview of financial planning approach that had created substantial net worth, despite modest lifestyle choices and continued employment in education sector. The investment activities included individual stock holdings in education technology companies, where my professional expertise enabled informed decision-making, municipal bond investments that supported community infrastructure development while generating tax-advantage income, and real estate investment trust participation that provided portfolio diversification and inflation protection. The combined investment income exceeded my teaching salary and contributed to financial independence that enabled autonomous decision-making about lifestyle and career choice. Marcus contributed to this conversation by providing perspective about my values-driven approach to financial management and wealth building that prioritized long-term security and charitable giving capacity over lifestyle inflation or material consumption. Alina's financial planning reflects commitment to building resources that enable continued community service and educational contribution, rather than pursuing conventional markers of wealth or status. Carmen's response to learning about investment activities and passive income generation reflected both surprise about the extent of my financial sophistication and growing appreciation for how comprehensive financial planning had created circumstances that differed dramatically from family assumptions about my economic situation. Alina, building substantial investment portfolio while maintaining modest lifestyle demonstrates exactly the kind of financial discipline and long-term thinking that creates genuine security and independence. The revelation of complete financial picture required addressing questions about net worth, annual income, and financial capacity that would enable lifestyle choices and spending patterns far exceeding my current modest arrangement. The combination of teaching salary, consulting income, and investment returns provided total annual income approaching $200,000, while conservative spending patterns and strategic saving had created net worth exceeding $800,000. Isabella's processing of this financial information reflected both admiration for my wealth-building success and confusion about why someone with such substantial resources would choose to maintain modest lifestyle and resist family pressure for enhanced wedding celebration. Alina, your financial circumstances enable virtually any wedding celebration you might desire, yet you continue to prefer minimal spending and simple arrangements. I need to understand the values and priorities that motivate these choices.
The question Isabella posed required explanation of philosophical approaches to money, success, and personal fulfillment that differed significantly from conventional perspectives about wealth utilization and lifestyle optimization. My financial planning prioritized security, charitable giving capacity, and freedom to make career choices based on personal fulfillment rather than economic necessity, while avoiding lifestyle inflation that might compromise long-term financial independence. Financial security provides freedom to make decisions based on values and personal fulfillment rather than economic pressure. I explained, addressing the philosophical foundation for my approach to wealth management and lifestyle choices. The wedding budget reflects our preference for meaningful celebration rather than expensive demonstration.
and our financial capacity enables this choice rather than constraining it. The comprehensive disclosure of professional activities and financial circumstances had transformed family understanding of my situation, while validating the wedding planning choices that had generated months of pressure and intervention effort. The modest teacher that my family thought they knew had been revealed as successful entrepreneur and community leader, with financial resources and professional recognition that exceeded their expectations and contradicted their assumptions about appropriate family support and intervention. Diego's participation in this conversation reflected both surprise about the extent of professional accomplishments that I had kept private, and appreciation for the strategic thinking and long-term planning that had created financial success while maintaining commitment to education and community service. Alina, your professional portfolio and financial planning demonstrate exactly the kind of success that our parents hoped we would achieve through education and hard work. But you have accomplished this while staying true to your values about meaningful work and community contribution. The family discussion continued for 3 hours as Isabella, Carmen, and Diego processed the implications of learning about professional activities, financial circumstances, and values-driven decision-making that had been completely hidden from their previous understanding of my life and choices. The conversation addressed questions about privacy motivations, family relationship dynamics, and the assumptions that had led to months of misguided intervention effort. Isabella's acknowledgement of the situation reflected both her professional integrity and her growing understanding of how fundamentally her assessment and intervention strategies had been misdirected. Alina, I owe you a comprehensive apology for making assumptions about your circumstances and pressuring you to accept assistance that you clearly did not need. Your professional accomplishments, financial independence, and values-driven decision-making demonstrate capabilities and wisdom that I failed to recognize or respect. The conversation concluded with family agreement that my wedding planning choices reflected deliberate preferences rather than financial constraint, and that continued pressure for enhanced celebration would be inappropriate, given my demonstrated capacity for autonomous decision-making and financial independence. The intervention campaign that had been motivated by love and concern had been based on fundamental misunderstandings that complete disclosure had finally corrected. Carmen's final comments reflected both maternal pride in my achievements and maternal concern about the secrecy that had prevented family celebration and support of professional accomplishments that represented exactly the kind of success that parents hope to witness and encourage. Alina, we are proud of your professional leadership, financial success, and commitment to values that prioritize meaningful contribution over material accumulation. We regret that our intervention efforts were based on incomplete understanding of your circumstances and choices. The evening of comprehensive disclosure had fundamentally transformed family relationship dynamics while validating my autonomous approach to wedding planning and lifestyle choices. The professional accomplishments and financial independence that had been revealed demonstrated that my modest celebration preferences reflected deliberate values rather than economic constraint. That family intervention efforts had been both unnecessary and inappropriate, given my demonstrated capacity for sophisticated decision-making and strategic planning. The week following the comprehensive disclosure about my professional activities and financial circumstances required careful navigation of transformed family dynamics as Isabella, Carmen, Diego, and Miguel processed the implications of discovering that their assumptions about my life had been fundamentally incorrect. The revelation that their modest teacher daughter and sister possessed substantial financial resources, professional recognition, and sophisticated strategic thinking capabilities necessitated complete recalibration of family relationships and communication patterns that had been established over years of well-intentioned but misguided interventions. Isabella's response to learning about my complete professional portfolio demonstrated both her intellectual honesty and her struggle to reconcile the successful entrepreneur and community leader I had revealed myself to be with the struggling teacher narrative that had motivated months of intervention effort. Her corporate background provided framework for understanding the sophistication of my consulting work and investment strategies, yet she remained confused about why someone with my resources and capabilities would choose to maintain modest lifestyle and continue elementary school teaching. The first conversation Isabella initiated after the disclosure dinner occurred Tuesday evening, when she called to express both admiration for my professional accomplishments and continuing confusion about my choices regarding wedding planning and lifestyle management. Her tone reflected genuine respect for my achievements while revealing persistent difficulty, accepting that my preferences might differ from conventional approaches to wealth utilization and status demonstration. Alina, I have spent the past few days processing everything you shared about your foundation leadership, consulting work, and investment activities. Isabella began, her voice carrying mixture of admiration and bewilderment that characterized her attempt to understand my decision-making framework. Your professional portfolio represents exactly the kind of success that demonstrates strategic thinking, community leadership, and financial sophistication that I respect and aspire to achieve. Isabella's acknowledgement of my professional accomplishments represented significant shift from her previous characterization of my circumstances as evidence of limitation and need for family intervention. Her corporate training enabled her to appreciate the complexity of managing multiple professional roles while building substantial wealth through diversified income sources and strategic investment management. However, Isabella's continued questions about my lifestyle choices revealed difficulty understanding why someone with my financial capacity would choose modest living arrangements and simple wedding celebration rather than pursuing lifestyle enhancements and status demonstrations that her corporate environment had trained her to associate with professional financial achievement. Alina, I understand and respect your commitment to values-driven decision-making and your preference for meaningful work over maximum income generation. Isabella continued, attempting to bridge the gap between admiration for my accomplishments and confusion about my choices. However, I remain puzzled about why you maintain such modest lifestyle when your financial resources would enable virtually any living arrangements, travel opportunities, or celebration choices you might desire. The question Isabella posed reflected broader cultural tensions between values-based living and consumption-oriented success metrics that influenced professional environments and social expectations throughout American society. Her corporate career had reinforced beliefs about the importance of lifestyle optimization and status demonstration for professional advancement and social relationship management, making my alternative approach difficult for her to understand or accept completely. My response to Isabella's inquiry required explanation of philosophical frameworks that prioritized financial security, charitable giving capacity, and freedom to make career choices based on personal fulfillment rather than economic necessity. The modest lifestyle choices that puzzled Isabella actually enabled strategic wealth building and community contribution that aligned with my values while providing foundation for long-term financial independence and professional autonomy. Isabella, the modest lifestyle choices that concern you actually enable strategic wealth building and community impact that align with my values while providing security and freedom that expensive lifestyle consumption would compromise, I explained. Addressing the philosophical foundation for my approach to money management and personal fulfillment. Financial independence provides opportunity to make decisions based on meaning and contribution rather than economic pressure, which is more valuable to me than material accumulation or status demonstration. The conversation with Isabella continued for 90 minutes as she attempted to understand the values and priorities that motivated my choices while processing the implications of discovering that her intervention efforts had been based on fundamental misunderstandings about my circumstances and needs. Her intellectual curiosity and professional respect for strategic thinking enabled appreciation for my approach even when it differed from her own preferences and cultural expectations. Carmen's response to the professional and financial revelations demonstrated both maternal pride in my achievements and maternal concern about the secrecy that had prevented family awareness and celebration of accomplishments that represented exactly the kind of success that parents hope to witness and support. Her emotional investment in family relationships made my privacy choices particularly difficult for her to understand and accept. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up.
Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.